Good evening all, fellow Scouters. On behalf of Scout in Ireland, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. This session will be for 1 hour. My own name is Noel Leahy. I'm a Scouter with the 27th Galway Caravan, just outside Loughrea, the beautiful part of East Galway. I'm also the Provincial Support Officer for the Western Province, so basically I cover all of Connacht and Clare. So the purpose of our webinar tonight is to chat with Scouters from around the country, as we're going to look at how they scouted through COVID, what they've done, how they achieved it, the initial steps taken by the group to return to scouting. And that was return to scouting with all sections. We're going to look at maybe the different sections and how they achieved it. And the initial steps taken by the group to return to scouting. The general outline for the webinar tonight, there's going to be questions to Scouters will be through the Q&A button. So there's a Q&A button on the bottom bar there, and that's where you can feed in the questions. When the presenters are finished the chat, we can go through the Q&A. If you want to ask a question of a particular presenter, just put their name at the start of the question, and then we'll know where to direct it to. Okay. To introduce the presenters tonight, or just give a quick overview of them, we have tonight we have 4 Scouters telling their story. We have Brendan O'Gorman from Galway, Rónán McGibbon from Newry, Justin Ryan from Kilkenny, and Kieran Gildee from Dublin. We still claim him as a Loughrea man, but we'll talk about that later. So I'll get them to introduce themselves in more detail as they come on and give their presentation. So our first presenter tonight will be Brendan O'Gorman from Galway. So I'm going to sorry, there's 2 other people I forgot to introduce tonight. My apologies. We have Patsy Kelly is going to deal with all the Q&As tonight, the questions and answers, and our stage manager and IT guy tonight is the one and only James Fox. Okay, so I'll get James to hand you over to Brendan there, guys, and Brendan will do his little chat with you there about the joys of scouting through COVID. Okay, Brendan.
Hello. My name is Brendan O'Gorman. I'm the group leader and the scout leader in 14th Galway. We as a group are mostly parent leaders. I've been doing it for a while. That's why they made me group leader. We've been scouting outside since June, and we're planning to keep outside until next September at the earliest. We lost one of our meeting halls as a school, and our community centre didn't quite tell us not to come back, but made it very difficult for us to use it. So we decided on a full 12 months outdoor programme. Our story in June was that we were doing online meetings during the lockdown, and we ran out of steam. The kids were itching to see each other and get outside. So we started with ventures, sent them out in groups of, I think it was 6 back at the beginning of June. And they, of course, produced lovely photographs about 4 metres apart. And we then moved from then to scouts, so that they met in 2 different nights at the beginning. And then as June went on and the bigger groups happened, we moved down to cubs and beavers. Our communication to parents was key, and we are regularly sending out sort of group-wide parent information emails about every 2 months as the situation changes. So we identified a number of things at the very beginning. One was we had to accept that the children are children. The kids were not used to being back in school yet, so this was one of their first activities with other children during the summer. So we laid that out to parents and said, while we will promote social distancing, we have to accept that they're kids and they're not going to be adults about it. And also we have to explain that to all our scouters. Now, as parents, most of the scouters were aware that their kids were sort of crawling up the walls at this stage, and were very keen to help get their kids outside. So once we had set up a structure to an outdoor meeting, and that was probably the key for us, that we took what we used to do in a hall and moved it lock, stock and barrel outside with opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies, the whole works. So it's not an event, it's very much a meeting. We also at the Beaver and Cub end, renamed our sixes into the colours like the old days, red, blue, green, so that the parents knew that they had a blue beaver, and the blue beaver went to the blue scouter at the car park and then spent the meeting with the blue scouter. So there was a few things like that. We also went back to coloured waggles because we had no uniform to show the colours for the sixes. So the beavers very quickly knew I was a red beaver. You could just say red beavers to the left, blue beavers to the right, and simple things like that. We also invested in 4 gazebos. So we brought a bit of structure to the park, just like a football pitch would have flags, and they had their gazebo, and that was their out space, and they had to stay within that space and away from the other 6 or the other lodge. Scout-wise, it was patrol-based. That's how they normally operate, so we had to sort of reinforce that. And once they got used to that, we actually ended up running a full annual camp in Rosslare, and the venture similarly as full summer X in Wicklow. It did involve the group buying a whole rake of small tents from the scout shop. So some of the activities on the camps were not available, so we were able to buy the tents within the camp budget, and everybody had to sleep on their own, which some of the younger scouts found a little difficult, to be honest, which involved me standing outside a tent for about 3 hours multiple nights helping kids go to sleep. But they had a great camp. It was kind of a very strange camp because they arrived all very tired, and as the week went on, they re-energized and became kids again, and they were out playing games. So, somebody said something and I didn't quite catch it. What I think somebody just asked there about the tents and the camp budget. We have a sort of a standard price for our week-long camps, and we were able to stay within that price point and put the tent within the cost of the camp. Is basically kind of what because we had a camp planned last September, so parents were expecting had a budget for the camp, and thereby we were able to stay within that price point and still buy the tents. Was kind of the point. The ventures meanwhile hammocked, which they always wanted to do, so they thought it was great that they got the hammock. Since then, our most difficult period was September, when we were managing the link, because we had all the kids organised into small teams, so they were in their teams and everything was settled, and then September came along and the link moved everybody around. We had to reform our sections, and then of course level 3 kicked in, then level 5. So the last few months has been a constant sort of every few weeks resetting the plan. But I suppose the key to us was at the very beginning, we took the concept of a pod of 6 kids and a bubble of scouters and youth members of 15, and we mapped the beaver lodges, the club sixes, the patrols and the crews to those arrangements. So whenever the numbers come to us, we always, all the government restrictions are based on the number 6 and 15. And we were able to just say we're now moving into the 15 bubble phase, and our cup packs split into 2 and operate completely separately as 2 half packs now. And same with beavers, and the patrols meet as patrols only in scouts, and the patrol leader is given a full 1-hour program, and they work through it, and the scouter just stands in the back of the field and is only there for help. So by working that out at the very beginning and outlining that information to the parents, I know at some point people sort of said, there's words of bubbles and pods thrown around, but we gave it precise meaning to our parents, what it means for our group, and thereby when we went to 3, we just announced that we were moving to the bubble protocol, and that had been outlined in advance to them, so they knew what was going to happen. And then we had to take a little break when level 5 came along until we got the news that we could go back to that 15 outside. But to be honest, we needed a week off after 6 months of doing this. So we took it like a little midterm, but we'll be back to full operations again on Sunday. Just in terms of Scouters, our main reaction of our Scouters was a few of them have healthcare issues and they pulled out. A few who did that at the beginning then came back as the schools came back. So everybody has their own risk view, and we respect that. And if someone says they're uncomfortable, we just leave it at that. We don't go into it with anyone. But we've had to recruit a few extra adults because, say, when the Cub Pack split, it means there's an extra Scouter. The ratios mean an extra Scouter is needed. So, and we also always have to have Scouters on call because people can be. A number of children have had to be not removed because it wasn't on our time, but we get a notice to say this child and their parent who's a Scouter are isolating at the moment, so they're not going to be coming down. And we always love to have that 24 hours in advance, but it doesn't always come. So each meeting always has a few subs stepped up on ready to go at the last minute. But the plan to the adults was about minimising the amount of contact kids have with adults, so the risk to a volunteer having to isolate because somebody in the Scout meeting was positive, was to be minimised so that people wouldn't lose their opportunity to work. So we had to outline that from the beginning because we are only volunteers. I think that's sort of a quick synopsis of what we are doing. So.
Thanks for that, Brendan.
I'll hand over to the next person.
Thank you. I suppose just to be aware, guys, there are some people there's a bit of connection issue out there tonight. I don't know whether it's the weather or what it is, but just to be aware, this event is being recorded, so we will be able to live stream it out after this, guys. So apologies if there's anyone there with connection issues. So thanks for that, Brendan. We appreciate that. And we have Rónán from Newry is up next, so I'll hand you over to Rónán to tell you his story. Thanks, Rónán.
Good evening. As Noel said, my name is Rónán McGibbon from First Dromere Newry Scout Group in the Northern Province. In First Dromere Scout Group, I am the Deputy Group Leader and I'm also the Beaver Section Leader. I suppose to give you a bit of background on why I'm on this call and how we sort of arrived ourselves in the virtual scouting movement. Pre-COVID, we were a fairly healthy group, plenty of camping, plenty of hiking. You know, the Mourne Mountains are our back garden, so we got out there as much as we could with all our sections. COVID hit around that week of St. Patrick's Day, and we made the decision pretty immediately that before the advice was given to cease all activities, we decided ourselves to stop. And we moved immediately to virtual scouting. Since then, we've held approximately, maybe more than 150 Zoom meetings between all the sections, group council meetings, trustee meetings, etc. In terms of turnout, we're relatively well off group in the sense of we have 120 youth members thereabouts. And we're fortunate that we have about 90% turnout on our Zoom meetings on average. And of that's facilitated by a group of our Scouters. I would say about 50% of our Scouters are actively involved with the Zoom meetings. About half of them just maybe, for whatever reason, don't take part in the Zoom meetings, and that's fair enough. I mean, I think every group's going to see that to a certain extent. So I suppose the question is really, how did we have our success in the sense of how are we still going on Zoom? You know, for us, face-to-face scouting isn't an option, and we can't see it being an option until next year. So our group council made the decision to stick with the virtual scouting, and each section is going at it as best they can. Our sort of area of success in terms of the virtual scouting has been normality. And normality is something that we're not, this is not a normal situation any of us find ourselves in. And so our thinking is to inject normality where we can. So our Zoom meetings are very straightforward. For every section that we try and follow what a meeting would be like in the Scout Den. So we welcome the children on, whether it's Beavers or Rovers, we welcome them on at the usual time. We start off with our prayer. Every young person in Scout is expected to wear their shirt or their beaver or cub jumper and their neckerchief. And we start off with the prayer. We have a bit of a flag break. And then we move on to say our news for the beaver and cub sections. We do a round robin with every child. They get to tell us a wee snippet, a wee story from that week. We find that works well with the beavers and cubs. Scouts, Ventures, not so much, maybe willing to share that information. Then we move on to photos, and we do a wee sort of a slideshow of all the photos different young people have got involved in the past week, their activities, whether it's walking home from school, whether it's getting outside in the sun or the rain, whatever they've got up to. Move on to a bit of a game, a Zoom game, and we found great solace in the Facebook groups that exist, the first virtual Facebook group that's a worldwide group, the Irish first Facebook group, the English first Facebook group. We pull a lot of games and activities from there. So we run a fun wee game, a Zoom orientated game at the start to kickstart our meeting, and then we move into some form of scouting activity. After our scouting activity, which I'm going to come back on, after our scouting activity, we move then to close with the prayer and finish the meeting just as we normally would. I would say to the Beavers, colony alert. We'd all stand up in front of our computers and colony dismissed, and they'd salute, and that would finish off our meeting. We found that programme on Zoom is very similar to a programme in face-to-face scouting, in the sense that you have the same structures in place. You know, it has to be structured, it has to be prepared, and we try and follow that through in the online. So, for example, the Scout section recently they did a cooking programme. So for four or 5 weeks, they came on to Zoom, they had their prayer, they opened their meeting as I've described, and then they together on Zoom cooked something or tried to plan a meal that they planned that they would cook on a trangie on camp or on a hike, and they would repeat that for 4 or 5 weeks in the sort of plan do review fashion. The Cubs, for example, before the summer, the Cubs had a pioneering programme, so they were encouraged to collect twigs and elastic bands and wee bits of string, and then together they practiced frames and building different bits and pieces on the Zoom call interactively and live. I even had a go at teaching beavers how to tie knots over Zoom, and I'll be honest, it wasn't the most successful, but it gave them something to do, and to be honest, it gave the parents something to do as well. So for the next week, the parents were frantically Googling and texting us and asking, how do we tie this reef knot? I'm getting stuck here, I'm stuck there. And so it was bringing scouting into the young person's home. One bit of feedback we've got from our parents since starting the virtual scouting has been, and it's been consistent, has been that they could not believe and they did not expect scouting to be what it is. Now, albeit the scouting that the young person is experiencing on Zoom isn't exactly typical scouting, but the parents are getting an insight into what we do, how we do it, the way we behave, and we found that as the Zoom meetings go on, we're receiving more and more support from the parents and more willingness to participate, to the extent that some nights we'll come on to the beaver or the cub at the scout meeting, and you'll find the beaver or the cub sitting, the parent on one side, sibling on the other side, and all three of them are engaging fully in the meeting and doing the activities. So it's really bringing scouting into the home and arguably opening up scouting to more people and more parents. I know there's a lot of I think there's a sense of fear for some people in terms of technology, and it's very understandable. We live in a world now where we're surrounded by it, and it can be very overwhelming. In our Scout group, we've been fortunate. There's a couple of us who are younger Scouters and very au fait with technology who have been able to help other Scouters in the group get off the ground and get a running start in sense of Zoom and the use of a computer and how to use it in the scouting context. But I think that now that we're running a while, we can definitively say that there's no person out there who can't run a Scout meeting, regardless of what a Scout meeting virtually on Zoom, regardless of their previous experiences with technology or their expertise. And I'd be glad to take any questions people have, and I'm sure people have a lot of questions in the sense of how to go about it, ideas, how do you manage it, what if it doesn't work? And to be honest, when we first started this, we didn't know if it was going to work. It was really a shot in the dark, but we felt we had to do something. And perseverance, I think, is key. And as we persevered, it got better and better, and I think we're at a point now where our online scouting is working, and I think it could work for everyone, and it can keep us all safe at this sort of very challenging time, because this pandemic isn't just going to go away tomorrow. And so we're sort of using the virtual scouting in Newry as a platform to look to the future in the short term, certainly.
Yeah. Thanks for that,
Okay,
Rónán, well done. And I think it's, an alternative style of scouting. You engaged with where you are within the whole COVID and said, yeah, we need to come up with something different, and fair play. That's what it's all about. So our next speaker up, our next scouter up tonight is Justin Ryan from Kilkenny. So James, I'll hand you over to Justin there, and we'll let him introduce himself. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Noel. Hello, everyone. Justin Ryan is my name. I am a assistant venture leader and also the group leader in 3rd Kilkenny, Thomastown in County Kilkenny. And I suppose I was asked to come on here tonight just to share with you our experience of scouting in our group. I suppose going back, since March, just to give you a brief summary of how we got on. So our scout group is made up of about 150 youth members. We have our own scout den in Thomastown, and like everyone, I suppose, when we all stopped back in March, we went, with online and a few activities and all that stuff, and it was great and it was good fun, and we did took part in all the stuff that Scouting Ireland put out there for us, the postcards, and came up with lots of program activities ourselves and whatever else. But when there was, I suppose, a bit of a relaxation in the restrictions around the end of June, when, if I recall now, I think it was that we were allowed to get back maybe in numbers of 15 or so, we saw an opportunity where maybe we could do something, I suppose, and come together and see what we could figure out. So at that stage, lots of phone calls initially to all our scouters, Zoom meetings, getting together, trying to see was there a consensus that we would be happy to come back and try and do something again with our youth members. And there was pretty much. And obviously, look, like everyone else, there was obviously fear and worry and in some shape or form that still exists today, of course, in how we operate. And this thing hasn't gone away, as we all know. And communication was probably key, and with our parents was very important as well, obviously, to let them know what was going on. So we came up with a plan, and we stuck to the plan and make sure everyone knew what the plan was, and as I say, kept communicating that through it, be email, WhatsApp messages, whatever it was. And we started back in the first week of July, and happy to say we've been scouting ever since. We finished off the scouting year at the end of August and took a 2-week break, and started off our new scouting year first week of September, and I say we're still going since. And yeah, look, it's been great, I suppose, to get back, because you can see the benefit in the kids, and you can even see the benefit in us as adults getting back into it as well, and a kind of a sense of normality. A lot of work went into getting back. Like we had our own building, so we had to invest some money in everything from sanitizers to signage to tents and etc. We did make a decision, I suppose, that everybody bought into, to stay outdoors only, and that still is the case today. So we didn't go, even though we have our own den, we didn't go back into the building, and we haven't done so as of yet. So we have remained outside. So we've used sheds. We had marquees up all summer, which was great. And we were able to use those, and look, you just improvise, because the restrictions kept changing. It's been a roller coaster ride, and they'll continue to change, I'm sure, and every time you have to see where you're at and start over maybe again in some cases, but it's been a very positive experience, so much so that we, in the last month alone, in October, we had 4 new scouts join our group across different sections. We've 2 beaver sections, 2 cub sections, scouts, ventures and rovers, and we had 7 new scouters do the pathway course, new training course. So we've actually increased in numbers. We still have some scouters who haven't come back. We still have a couple of youth members who haven't come back as well, with underlying conditions and whatever else, and that's perfectly okay. Nobody was forced to come back, and some came back in their own time when they were comfortable to do so. But all in all, it's been a hugely positive experience for us, we never had such a busy summer. Scouting in the summer is something that, okay, you're involved in Phoenix in your summer camp, but like we went all through the summer once we started back, which was great given the weather. Our marquees blew down there recently with high winds, so we had to scrap that for now. So it hasn't all been rosy either. We had adults and we had some of our children with COVID scares. And to say, look, the weather and the cold is a challenge now, but look, again, we're scouts and we improvise, I suppose, and we come up with a solution. And I fully appreciate that, look, every scout group story is going to be different, and it's not a case of one size fits all. Some groups will go online, as Rónán has said, some won't have their own premises, some will. But look, tonight, I suppose, just to share, I suppose, our story maybe with you, to how it worked for us, and all in all, it's been great. No point in saying otherwise. It's been great. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Justin. I appreciate your input there. Again, kind of, it's great to see that positivity of, in where we are within COVID at the moment, that you've actually facing an increase in your numbers, and I suppose that there's more interest out there now than ever to get the kids involved and youth members and adults to get involved in the group. So well done on that. That's a great achievement. So our next speaker up, last but not least, we have Kieran Kildee from Dublin. So I'll hand you over to Kieran. So over to you, Kieran.
Thanks, Noel. Good evening, brother and sister Scouts. My name is Kieran Kildee, and I'm group leader of the 9th and 10th Dublin in Auckland Street, which is in Dublin's North City. And we've 103 kids in the group, coming from 15 schools, which in itself is a challenge sometimes. Just to say how we got on for the last couple of months, we initially did some Zoom activities across the board. We didn't have the technological know-how initially across the board, so those sections that could continue with that did. And others then just tried to keep, scouting on the road as best we could in the real sense, but subject to the terms and conditions. We had a virtual WIT camp way back and that was really popular, especially with the parents who appreciated that. We wanted to keep, the record going. We'd camped at WIT for 83 years, and we were keen that kids would camp in their own backyards or back gardens or whatever, and that went down a treat. We did a summer camp, a short summer camp for Scouts and Venture Scouts in our own place up in Glencree in County Wicklow using hammocks. And so we had bought extra hammocks and we got a loan of hammocks. So that again was a unique experience, which we'll definitely do again. We took part in the national initiative for sending Easter cards to an elderly residential centre here in the parish, and we probably do the same again for that at Christmas, now that An Post are offering free postage to and from nursing homes. So I think that's something that we should bear in mind. We kept having hikes in as much as we could, and that really, the only challenge there, I suppose, was meeting the large number of kids on streets. We're in a very urban area. It's artisan dwelling cottages, and so we'd ask people not to come into the hall and to gather in the streets, which in itself was novel. And we would that meant that we had to pre-plan the transport really well with parents and that, and but some of the parents took that on, which is always helpful. It gave us an opportunity for some den maintenance, so having your own den can be good sometimes, but it also means that you have to look after it. And so we took the opportunity for a small number of scouters to come down and tidy up the den and that, so that gave us an opportunity to catch up on a bit of work. Level 3 then, I think it was level 3 gave us the opportunity later on then to come back into the den, and we split the times there. The Beavers did two lodges, week on, week off, while the Cub Scouts and they did 2 patrols for an hour, 2 6s for an hour, and then 2 6s and 2 patrols for a second hour, and that was working out very well, in fact. And the Venture Scouts topped 15. We've had the best attendance from Venture Scouting. The teenagers are very happy to get out of the house, and so we were able to spread them out around the den and have distant team games, quizzes, and so forth and so on, charades and stuff like that. Going up ceremonies were shortened very much. We had them in September. You went up really and had your ceremony in the group, in the section that you were going to. With regard to the den, we set up an isolation room. We had to do some alterations to doors so that we could see into them, and signage. But there was grants available, and I think they're still available for that, for PPE and that. So make sure you avail of those. And there's a more recent grant of €400 for ICT, and I think it's important that you go for that as well. But the activities, pretty much we tried to stick to the norm in as much as we could for as long as we could, and only with the distancing. We had great support from the parents using the 4 WhatsApp groups that we've had. We're out this weekend coming to a beaver ramble on Saturday, a cub ramble on Sunday to Chapel Izzard along the river, Leahy, and a Venture Scout and Rover Scout and Scout hike on Saturday, subject to the usual terms and conditions. Our challenge really was we operated kind of on the basis of a triangle of consent, whereby if we had the government and Scouting Ireland on board, and we had the parents and kids on board, and that was easy. And then the more important and the biggest challenge, I suppose, was having the Scouters on board. Like some of the previous speakers, we have Scouters with medical conditions and that who would have been, nervous. And in fact, one said, "Listen, I'm out for the duration of this because of a condition within the household," and that was fine. Once you know exactly how anybody stands, you can make alternative arrangements. We really looked for kind of a lot of flexibility across the board with our leaders, and we got that. Leaders were able to cover other sections, again subject to the terms and conditions, and keeping places clean and tidy, and masks and transport and so forth. So I think the biggest challenge was to think positive and to continue to think positive throughout the the whole event. We will look back on it in years to come and say, listen, we did it, and a good positive attitude. There's nothing really, we're an outdoor based movement, so really we should be thriving. Even, somebody said there's no such thing as bad weather, even though it's coming in tonight. There's only bad equipment and bad gear. So let's kind of get out and about as much as we could. We had a PL's training course about 2 months ago. Again, urban areas, small little tiny parks that you would call gardens, but we have little urban parks around the parish, and for the first time we used all of those as bases for the PLs and APLs to go around and do pioneering and do initiative games. And we started off in the den, and then we came back in the den, gave them their certificates and gave them their stripes or badges. Support, I think is what it's all about, particularly for Scouters. We've had no problem getting kids down to meetings or to events. Great parental support. We recruited 3 leaders during the lockdown, and getting them onto a Pathways to Scouting course has been a challenge because there's so many wanting to do them on this side, but we'll tackle that. They'll be able to attend courses in other provinces. I think the biggest thing really has been for us is that having the den over the years has kind of taken us too much into the den, and now this has forced us out and about a bit more than we would have been used to, and that's no harm at all. And we're getting ready now for between now and Christmas, and God knows what the new year will bring. So that's it from me.
Thanks for that, Kieran. Well done. I suppose it's amazing how we can all get so depending on a din, like someone told me one time, we are an outdoor, where our whole goal in our meetings is we're inside planning to get out of doors, but we get quite complacent at times and spend more time indoors than outdoors. So yeah, it's maybe there's a little bit of learning in all of this, that we need to use the out of doors a bit more. We have there's no area or no group that there isn't a park or a mountain or a lake quite close by. But just I suppose one general question across to all of you, and you can answer it, is I suppose the biggest challenge I could see from talking to a lot of groups out there was, is to give that confidence to the adults that, right, lads, we're going to meet up next week with 10, 15 youth members. How did you come across that, or how did you, I suppose, had you better work to do to create that confidence within your group, to give so the adults would kind of were comfortable to go back out to come down or to meet out of doors with the groups of young adults? Anyone like to take that?
Brendan's going to take it.
Brendan.
One of the stranger experiences I had as a long-term scouter was when we first met our beaver leaders, who are all parents and have been in 1 or 2 years, and we sort of explained to them that they were going to be looking after 6 kids in a lodge for an hour, and that they had to look after those 6, and the other leader would be, 6 meters away with their lodge. And they got very worried about this because they were used to the kids sort of running around the hall and it all being contained and safe within the hall. And thereby when this was outside, this made them very nervous. And as a long-term scouter, this kind of was like, whoa, because we're supposed to be all in small groups all the time, in good theory of the scout method. And it was also something that I remember discussing with my county commissioner during the lockdown about how we would come back. And we immediately realised that how we make small groups would have to change. We'd have to let friends be together so that there would be no reason to go and talk to the other small group. Where traditionally we might separate brothers and sisters and things like this, we have to sort of go back to really natural groups of kids who do want to be together and not have an interest in the other lodge or 6 or patrol 4 meters away. The other thing that we did to encourage our leaders was we gave out very detailed plans to the first few meetings outside. We also ensured that, as we said earlier, we bought gazebos, and we bought some infrastructure to the park, and we ensured that was all set up in advance of the leaders turning up, so that the scouters, when they arrived in, they immediately saw some sort of structure that reminded them of the hall. Even though it was a big open football pitch, the pitch became small, a boxed area that we used, and we immediately got them into this new sort of normal of being in the park with this infrastructure. Because if you just go to an empty big grass field, you don't have anything to help you. It reminded me of, I learned a long time ago, the difference between a scout camp and anyone else's camp is boundaries. We might have tents like any normal family and stuff like that, but a scout camp always is boundaried off. We have this area for this patrol, that area for that patrol. This is our area of the field. And we replicated that in a much more detailed way in the park. So the leaders had comfort in their familiarity.
Yeah, that sounds good, Brendan. That sounds good. And again, I suppose, did you bring it right back to very, I suppose, simple scouting, Brendan, and basic scouting? Or, how did you continue working the adventure skills and the badge work?
Okay.
Or what did you do kind of on that level?
A few other things that we did, I realised just now, is one of the things is we shortened all our meetings. Okay. So beavers went from an hour and a quarter to an hour. Cubs similarly an hour and a half to. So we took off the 15 minutes that we knew the kids sort of chatted. So there was no chat time. It was activity. Yeah. And organised as as Rónán said about the Zoom meetings. If the meeting has to be very detailed planned and very detailed organised, so that everybody is busy, because busy people don't have opportunities to start messing with each other and breaking social distancing norms.
It was all back down to having a good, solid, planned...
Very solid, planned programme. Activity-wise, we also realised that we wanted to minimise sort of head-to-head working together. So if traditionally you might have said given a dome to a 6 to put up, we gave them 3, so that only 2 kids were working on it. And thereby they're naturally a metre apart because they're on either side of the tent. So it was things like that. So we have to sort of have two sets of sixes using our standard equipment in much smaller groups, and the other two working on something else, and then swapping back the week after. So there were a few things like that we did to try to promote social distancing in the activity rather than sort of follow through with the same thing. And especially outside, we've reduced the sitting around talking about spices or making plans. It's get down, do something from the moment you arrive, start building the catapult. And then by the time you're finished, firing it and taking it down, there's the hour gone. So.
Well done. Thanks, Brendan, for that. Is there anyone else who would like to feed in maybe their own thoughts on that, guys? No? Okay, I think there's a couple of questions there in the Q&A session there. Patsy, would you like to have a look at those there, or maybe just bounce a few questions onto the lads?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Noel. Right, so just a few questions coming in. How are your communities reacting to the Scouts getting back? So is there a positive, are you getting any feedback at all from your local community? I'll just throw it out as a general one there too. It's not aimed at anyone in particular. Anybody want to take that one up?
I'll come in on that. Patsy, can you hear me?
Thanks.
Yeah, in our own group in Ockram Street and around the Dublin North City, it's been really, really positive. Again, they're seeing scouting probably a little bit more than they had in the past. And they're seeing it as the Scouts, I suppose, as we are known to do, is leading the way with regard to trying to keep an element of normality in young people's lives. You know, I hopped in the car with a leader and 3 Venture Scouts last week. We were doing a bit of work from Glendale Lodge, and I asked them, "How's it going, lads?" And they said, the first one said depressing, and the second one was he was peed off, you know, type of thing. And that just struck me as, you know, we always think of teenagers as being, you know, obnoxious little gits sometimes, you know, but they are so precocious and so full of life and so vivacious and want to save the world. And here we had a situation whereby some of them are feeling pretty down, and it is really it's important for Scouts in the community to be seen to be tackling that. We're not school. It's not the same as school. It's clear from our attendance and that they see us very different, and it's a time for fun, friendship, challenge, out of doors. And I think the community realise that.
Yeah. I'll come again, we would have got, we've got extremely positive feedback again from the community. We're probably seen out a lot over the summer months. Hiking would have been, I suppose, the one thing that we did an awful lot of over the summer months and into the autumn as well. All sections from Beavers right up to Rovers, so would have been seen out quite a lot. And again, you know, people happy to see us out and happy to see us, I suppose, again, you know what I mean, out and about, doing the right thing and smiling, happy kids, you know what I mean, as they should be. So yeah, again, our feedback from the wider community has been great. We'd be quite active on our Facebook page as well, and getting a lot of positive feedback from the wider community and parents as well, which has been great. Yeah.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Kieran. Right, the next one, I think we might just check with all 4 of you guys, if you don't mind, as to reply on this one. Questions come in. Have numbers declined within your group? So have you noticed a fall off in numbers? So maybe if we go with Brendan first there.
I have the complete opposite. Our group has grown 23%. We've gone from 80 to 109 new members, and our adults are also growing. Sorry, the adult numbers are growing. They are also putting on a couple of pounds. But they're being public, the most surprising is our venture section. When the kids were in meeting, socially, and they were asking what they were doing, our members were going, well, we're doing this, and where are you doing it? Ventures, what's that? Can we join? And they literally did join. The venture section went from 3 last September to 30 now. So active, as Kieran said, the regularity, the doing something, they're all crying out for it. If we can do it safely outdoors, and outdoors is safe, safer than anywhere else. So if there's a mistake, it's less important than if it was in a unventilated closed cellar. The more we can do for this, the more the community, the councillors, the council in Galway here have come behind us and helped us. They all want to support us, and our group is thriving in this situation. It's quite bizarre. It's one of the our main challenges, managing that growth, even more than anything else right now.
Great. Thanks very much, Brendan. Rónán, could I just ask you the same numbers in your group? Have you lost kids or youth members rather, or what's your situation?
Unmuting myself would help. I was saying there, I think it's fantastic what Brendan said there, that his group has grown almost exponentially in the current climate. We haven't had, in Newry, we haven't had the same effect. We have lost some members. We've mostly lost adult members. And I think it comes down to the way in which we scout through COVID. As has already been mentioned, our group is scouting solely online at the minute, virtually. And for a lot of people, adults and young people, that isn't always ideal. You know, some people don't want to go onto a computer, some people can't go onto a computer. And so there is an element of that has affected our numbers. However, we're still pretty strong. And I think it's down to the enthusiasm of the scouters that do have the energy and the understanding and the willingness to learn. It's down to them whether or not it's successful, certainly when it comes to virtual scouting. It's all about the enthusiasm. It's much like running a weekly meeting or a section. You know, it's down to your own enthusiasm and how much you can put into it. And look, don't get me wrong, there's no two roads about it. Virtual scouting, I would argue there's just as much, if not more, work in it as physical face-to-face scouting. But for the likes of our group, it's the only option at the minute. You know, in the north here, we're supposedly coming to the end of a lockdown tomorrow. So for groups in the 6 counties, it hasn't been possible to meet face-to-face, so virtual has been our only option. And so it comes with its challenges, and it's not easy, and there's a lot of prep in it, but you have to look at the impact you're having on young people. Everything we do as scouters always goes back to our young people. And we believe in Newry that what we're doing is benefiting young people, and so that's what's driving us on. That's our motivator, and that's what's keeping us going.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rónán. Thank you. Kieran, same question to yourself.
Okay, we're holding our own. We've, I suppose, we had the unfortunate task of trying to collect our third tranche of subs on the 15th of September. And but the reaction to that was quite positive. You know, we turned out at about 85%, which we're very happy with. I think of only 2 kids have let us know that they simply cannot come back due to medical reasons at the moment. So we've told them their places are safe and so forth. There's a small half a dozen that we've heard nothing from at all. So, and we've had a couple of recruits. So again, we're holding our own really. So no major change there. 3 leaders.
Thanks, Kieran.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And Justin, have you suffered number-wise in your group, or have you lost kids?
Yeah, no, the opposite again, I suppose. So, and the funny thing is, every August we actually hold an annual registration day where the parents would come along, sign them up for the new year, fill out the consensus forms or the activity consent forms, and we make that into a bit of a kind of a field day, an occasion. We have all the tents up, fires lighting, the whole lot, and make it a very public event. And we advertise for new members. So obviously this year that didn't happen. And also we didn't advertise for any new members for the scouting year, because we started off again in September, even though we'd gone all summer. So we took it for the start of new scout year. So even without advertising, like again, yeah, our numbers have grown. I say we've 7 new scouters just went through the pathway in the last month. And 4 new kids have joined in the last month alone. We picked up another couple along the way. The other thing is as well, we'd been kicking around the idea, Patsy, for a couple of years now of opening a second beaver and cub section. And COVID forced our hand to get back scouting. We had to do that because, like, I mean, you know, the numbers were too big. So we had to get the numbers down and work in the smaller numbers. So like a positive for us is now we now have 2 beaver sections and 2 cub sections up and running and working with a 20. They're full. All those 4 sections are full with 24 kids in each one of them, with waiting lists for all of them. So yeah, look, I mean, it hasn't affected us in any way at all. Our numbers have grown actually over this, which is amazing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Justin.
What I meant to say as well is that we have waiting lists for beavers, cubs and scouts. We just simply haven't been able to take any bodies off the list really due to, you know, leaders availability and that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Kieran. Right, this is again just a question aimed at nobody in particular. If somebody might like to take it up. Is it difficult for the young people to socially distant, or are they used to it from school? So does anybody want to come in on that one?
I'll tell you who the worst section is. Ventures.
Yes.
Scouting is a circle. They start off with beavers and are kind of need our help, and they turn them back into them with an attitude called ventures. All the younger kids have absorbed all of what was in the media during lockdown. Fully, that's kind of the problem. They heard it on the radio, they heard it on their tellies, they heard their parents talking about it, and they built up that level of anxiety in their existence. And they're living with it all the time, and thereby they know to behave. And they really do try to behave. And it's becoming, for, you know, if you're 6 or 7, it's just what you do now, and it's possibly going to be what they do for quite a while, and they're going to have to unlearn it. Hopefully next year when the world gets back to normal or normals. But they will have to unlearn it. So we see them walking along and they naturally stand meters apart, just walking along. They don't walk along beside each other anymore. So the kids really have absorbed this, and that's kind of the mental health issue. So they really do socially distance, but it's not necessarily for positive reasons. It's because they absorb the fear and the anxiety of their parents and society, and they're carrying that around on their shoulders. And that's what we saw on camp. When it was lifted off them, there was a physical change. And I wish I had a video or a picture of the same kid at the beginning and the end, because I can't really explain that visual difference in their makeup as kids, but they are literally carrying it on their shoulders. So but they do behave, and they take it all very seriously, because it is very serious.
Okay, thanks very much, Brendan. Right, we'll take 2 more because we're just conscious of time here. There was a question there, just probably Rónán, this might be relevant to yourself, just about keeping the interest levels up to young people while they're online because of it being online. Is there any, I suppose, suggestions or ideas for making it, keeping it as interesting as possible, or how have you found that a problem to try and keep young people engaged online for a duration?
Yeah, it's definitely something to be cognizant of. I think for us, it's been the routine and normality. We've tried as much as possible to structure our Zoom meetings like a normal Scout meeting in the hall would run. And I think the Beavers, Cubs, Scouts, Ventures, Rovers, they empathise with that. You know, it reminds them of what it was like before. And so it adds that element of real scouting into the Zoom calls. The challenge to retain the sort of attention of the young people on Zoom is the same challenge we have in the Scout halls. It's having an active and engaging interactive program that the young people can join in with. Now, don't get me wrong, it is more of a challenge for Zoom in a sense that we've been conditioned to create program for face-to-face use in halls and outside, and now we're having to rearrange that and try and work it into a screen like this, which is a very different experience for the young people and for the Scouters. In terms of engagement, it really is just, the way we run it with Beavers, having the game, having your welcome and your introductions, and you all get to hear each other's news, then having a game, the equivalent of your high energy game in the hall, something to really excite them and get them bouncing up and down in the chair or running laps around the laptop, and then follow that up with a bit of scouting activity, whatever that might be. And as I said before, one of the best resources we discovered was that those Facebook groups that exist online where you can go and you can pull ideas, and even just reading through comments and conversations people are having, and suddenly you get a brainwave, I could do this or I could do that. That's where we've sort of got most of our material from. Some of them have been original ideas, but a lot of it has been regurgitated from what people have already done. And I don't think there's any harm in that either. You know, there's no point in reinventing the wheel every time you have to run a Zoom meeting.
Okay, thanks very much, Ron. Right, the next one then, what, again, not aimed at anybody in particular, but maybe you might have your own different answers to it. What traditional Scout activities have you been able to do in a COVID-compliant way? So, for example, pioneering, backwoods, orienteering, traditional Scout stuff. Anybody want to jump in on that one?
We've Kieran here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
thanks,
we've
Kieran.
concentrated on the old reliables of hiking, camping, pioneering. And when we were meeting indoors for a short time there, we started on the air activities for the beavers and cubs, levels 1 to 3 and that. So again, the difficult ones now at this stage, we didn't get around to doing the canoeing. We had notions of doing some canoeing during the summer months, but leader availability didn't allow us to do some of the paddling badges. But yeah, it's back to pioneering, hiking particularly, and camping.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to?
Yeah, welcome in there. So similar to Kieran, and we would have done quite a bit of cooking as well, both on tranches, open fires. Again, you know what I mean, the novelty of having a s'more, actually, you know, amazing after being without Scouts for so long. But yeah, so look, yeah, got back to a lot of the traditional stuff. Pioneering is going on in our Scout section at the moment. And yeah, just getting back to some basic badge work. So look, just adapting all the time, I suppose, to the same old thing, the hand washing, the social distance, the sanitizer, all that stuff. But it can be done, and like having to separate the gear and the kids stay in their own pods, all that sort of stuff. But again, everyone's familiar with all this stuff at this stage. But look, it can be done. It can be done.
That's great. Thanks very much, Justin. Right, we have quite a few more questions, folks, but I'm just conscious of time. We're just going up towards our hour. What we'll do is we'll take note of all the questions that are left, and we'll get some answers on them and get them posted up on our website. So I'll hand you back to Noel, who will just take you through the end. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Patsy. And again, thanks to all the presenters. I think it was great to get to see that different variety of knowledge and how different groups, you all kind of had a different way of doing things, but it all led to the same goal of how can we get our youth members and give them some quality scouting and I suppose some quality time in the out of doors, and and still fulfill the programme, which has been an amazing achievement by you all. So fair play to you and well done. I'd like to thank everyone that attended tonight. Again, just to be aware, there was some technical glitches, but we will be putting this up on the website, the recording of this, so it will be available for everyone to view. And there is some questions that we didn't get to tonight, but what we'll be doing over the next day or two, we'll send them out to the presenters and the scouters that are here tonight. We'll have a look at them. We'll answer them as best we can, and we'll email them out and send them out to everyone. Okay. I suppose just for a minute or two, there's two little things I'd like to do. I suppose this is the start for us of something, that we'd like to continue and grow as we go forward. And maybe within the Q&A area there for maybe a few minutes, could all the attendees maybe, if there's any future webinars that you'd like to see happening, to do, and it doesn't all have to be totally Scout related, but if there's any future webinars that you can think of, you can stick them in the Q&A, or you can, contact your local PSOs. It's the usual at the end of the letter. Or give us a shout, and we will consider everything. And there's a lot of need out there, maybe something on mental health. We are looking already at doing something on maybe how to sell the 12 Days of Christmas online. I think we might have Rónán lined up for that. We'll line up Rónán for that one again. He's our online expert at the moment. We might need you tomorrow to look at some of the technical issues we have as well tonight, Rónán. But if you can do that, and I suppose the one other element I'd like you to do maybe for a minute as well, guys, is, maybe on a level of 1 to 5 for the attendees, just stick in maybe a level of from 1 to 5. Was it a good experience for you tonight? Or, you know, I suppose 1 being of no benefit and 5 being of very good benefit to you. So I'd like to do that as well, if you would, for a minute, okay? And I suppose just to let you know as well, while you're doing that, we will have a webinar again next Wednesday night. What date it is, I can't remember, but it's next Wednesday night. And we will have 4 more different scouters on next week. And we will, hopefully, a Scouts Honour, we will do our best to sort out the technical glitches, guys. We're all kind of doing this, we're doing our best here, okay? So that's kind of it, guys. I thank you all again. Thank you for attending. Thank the presenters, and we wish you good night.